The Chargers have a hole at running back. Austin Ekeler is an unrestricted free agent this year, and so is Joshua Kelley. So without those two running backs, the Chargers have only Isaiah Spiller in their backfield, who was inactive for most of this past season, and Elijah Dotson, who only had 4 carries all of last year. And everybody knows that Jim Harbaugh has a specific kind of player that he wants on his team, and he has already made note of the guys that he likes. Keenan Allen, Derwin James, and Justin Herbert have been mentioned by him in interviews, but he has also reached out to several players on the team privately, and he might like Austin Ekeler enough to bring him back onto the Chargers. So make sure to like and subscribe if you do enjoy this content, bro. It helps me out so much. And now listen to this clip of Austin Ekeler talking about Jim Harbaugh reaching out to him.
Speaking of Jim, have you had an opportunity to talk to him yet since he got that?
Yeah,
job?
he reached out. He reached out to me, which I was actually surprised, just because I'm not guaranteed to be on the team again next year. But
that tells you something.
Yeah. He told me about how he just respected my game and just wanted to open the door for communication if I ever want to talk. I feel like I've been through there. I was part of that culture. I feel like I have the experience of what happened and how we can probably get away from that. Being a leader for me is something that I needed to step up in, and I feel like I can help bring that to the team this year. We need to make sure that we're holding ourselves to a high standard, and that the culture is about holding ourselves accountable and other players around us accountable, because I think it was lacking last year.
So Jim Harbaugh has actually reached out to Austin Ekeler, who is technically not even on this team since he's an unrestricted free agent, but I thought it was very interesting that he said he respects his game, and then Austin Ekeler went in to talk about how he wants to help change the Chargers culture and they need to hold themselves accountable because they were not able to do that last year. I mean, the things that Austin Ekeler is saying that he wants to bring to the Chargers, it sounds exactly like what Jim Harbaugh wants. I mean, he wants to be a leader in the locker room and he wants to hold other guys accountable, saying that that's something that the team lacked last year. And with how much Jim Harbaugh wants to run the ball and how much he values the run game, especially considering who he hired as his offensive coordinator in Greg Roman, we can expect a lot of running backs to probably be on this team and get a bunch of carries in the backfield with a running back by committee approach. If you re-sign Austin Ekeler, you're not re-signing him to be that lead back like he was last year, like the Chargers expected him to be. You're just going to re-sign him to be like a change of pace, a third down running back, a guy that will split carries with 2 or 3 other guys in that backfield. And I think Jim Harbaugh reaching out to Austin Ekeler and the fact that we know he wants to change this offense to be way more run heavy oriented, I think it's a good sign to possibly bring back Austin Ekeler, because he has shown talent throughout his career, man. And even though he struggled this past season for the better part of the year, I think a lot of the blame has to also be put on that offensive line and how bad that unit was in run blocking last year, especially later on in the season, man. I mean, the Chargers, a lot of people don't know this, they were the worst team in the league last year when it came to run blocking as graded by PFF. And that takes into account just the offensive line play in the rushing offense. When you look at the rushing offense in total, so that includes the offensive line play and the performance of the running backs like Austin Ekeler, they were also the worst graded team in the NFL, and that might surprise a lot of people. The Chargers were 25th in total rushing yards, but that includes their amazing week 1 rushing performance against the Dolphins, bro. That I loved that game. Even though we lost, I thought it was a really good outlook for the rest of our season, and it turned out to just be a total outlier rather than what we could have expected later on. I mean, looking back at the game, the Chargers had 233 rushing yards, which was the best in the NFL, and it was so good that it put both Joshua Kelley and Austin Ekeler in the top 10 running backs after week 1. But ever since that game, they fell off a freaking cliff, bro, and they could never find that same rushing success again. And if you take out that game and just replace it with what they averaged in rushing yards this season, they averaged 88 rushing yards a game outside of week 1. So you replace that week 1 performance, which was an outlier, with what they averaged for the rest of the season, then they would have had the least rushing yards in the NFL at only 1,497 yards for the year. And a big reason that rushing offense suffered outside of the Dolphins game was because of the loss of Corey Linsley to injury. And he is going to be gone for good because he's all but officially announced his retirement, and he even restructured his contract. This happened just today to allow the Chargers more flexibility in cap space, and it's going to clear about $10 million, and that's going to be from this year and next year. Now, I'm not putting this entire blame on the loss of Corey Linsley and the poor play of the offensive line outside of the center position, because that's not the case. The running backs are definitely to blame as well. And Austin Ekeler, he was not able to make as many guys miss as he usually does. He also dropped a lot of passes that were just some easy gimme passes. I mean, everyone was dropping passes last year, Austin Ekeler included. And a lot of people I know, they just don't like him because he wanted more money. And I actually kind of agree with Austin Ekeler here, because you look at his contract and the value that he was bringing to this offense outside of last season, of course, because it was a huge down year for him. He was being underpaid, but obviously last year it was basically like his worst season of his career, all things considered. But you just look at Austin Ekeler as part of a backfield by committee in a Jim Harbaugh offense. He can be extremely valuable for this team on the right contract. And Corey Linsley clearing that $10 million, it definitely helps the case to maybe bring him back if the money is right. And that is a big if, because his market value right now is about $7 million. I would not be giving him $7 million a season. I don't think I would give just about any running back $7 million a year. Not on this team. I don't think any running back should be getting paid that much money on the team that is currently structured the way it is right now. I think we can better allocate that money to help this team in other areas, like specifically, bro, that DB room, it needs a lot of help. But Austin Ekeler on the right contract, let's just say around $3 to $4 million a season. I mean, listen, he struggled with ankle injuries during this past year. Let's not forget how great of a receiving back and change of pace running back that Austin Ekeler can be when he is healthy. I mean, even Jim Harbaugh sees the value in him.
I know that, I mean, if things go well, it's going to be because of guys like Austin Ekeler and the players, and we're going to have huge emphasis on the run game. We got Block better up front. He's a tremendous back, and we'd love to have him on the team next year.
And again, you look at Austin Ekeler in terms of his mindset, and he has what Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz are looking for. I mean, this is an obsessive gym rat kind of dude that wants to be a part of a winning culture. He wants to help change the Chargers and win with them, and he is probably pound for pound the strongest guy on just about any team in the NFL. Certainly, he was pound for pound the strongest on the Chargers. No one is denying that. So now we know both sides are interested in possibly working out a contract, but let's look at who is on this free agent market for running backs and what they might be able to get money-wise compared to Austin Ekeler. Remember, his market value is $7 million a season. So at the top of the list right here, we have Derrick Henry, who is 30 years old at a market value of $10 million a season. I don't like that move at all, even though he is an awesome running back between the tackles. I just think that is too much money to spend. And if the offensive line continues to struggle in run blocking, listen, bro, Derrick Henry is not going to make guys miss in the backfield when guys are hitting him 2 to 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, even like 2 or 3 different defenders coming back. I mean, Derrick Henry is not that kind of guy that's going to make you miss like that. He's going to try to bulldoze you, but he needs to get a freaking running head start first. Like, come on. Josh Jacobs, he's unlikely as well, and I think he's probably going to go back to the Raiders, probably going to get franchise tagged by Tom Telesco, because remember, Tom Telesco was able to keep Melvin Gordon around so much because of that franchise tag. I envision him to do the same kind of thing with Josh Jacobs. And I know there have been rumors of Saquon Barkley because Ryan Leaf suggested it, but I don't think there's any fire there, man. I really don't, because I think it's all smoke. And Ryan Leaf, he just likes the idea of bringing a big name running back to the Chargers, even if it doesn't make sense money-wise. And he just brought it up on ESPN as a talking point. He would be too much money. The injuries concern me. He's getting up there in age, but as we go lower, it gets more interesting to me. Ezekiel Elliott, he's actually older than Saquon Barkley, but he would be a good between the tackles running back in a running back by committee approach. You don't want to give him too much to handle. And his market value, this is why it's so interesting to me, is $2.7 million a season. So you could sign him for 1 to 2 years on a very low contract and get some really good value out of him. And I know a lot of people think, oh, he's washed, but he actually rushed for more yards than Austin Ekeler did last year. And he was a solid addition for the Patriots, even though he is getting up there in age. I just think that this is a low risk and a medium reward that I would be willing to take a chance on. And then we look at some of the other names on this list, like Gus Edwards from the Ravens, obviously the ties there. Devin Singletary, I think he's probably going to be signed in Houston. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, another change of pace guy. If you don't want to bring back Austin Ekeler, you can get Clyde Edwards-Helaire for cheaper, and he's actually 4 years younger than Austin Ekeler. DeAndre Swift, I really liked him coming out of the draft. His career has not panned out. You could do a flyer on him. His market value is about $2 million a season. There's a lot of good running backs here. Damian Harris, I mean, Cam Akers, he never really got a chance with the Rams. I think he would be a really good running back to add, but he is a restricted free agent. J.K. Dobbins, again, that connection with the Ravens. He could come out to L.A. and hopefully he could stay healthy. He's only 25 years old. Again, running back by committee approach. You just want to add somebody that's going to bring value on limited snaps. Kareem Hunt even, he's still 28 years old. He was so good with the Browns, and you could bring him in between the tackles, run him, and you see value. You see the value in this, bro, because his freaking market value is under $2 million a season. You bring him in for 1 to 2 years. You bring AJ Dillon, who is 3 years younger than Kareem Hunt. He brings that same value in between the tackles, and his market value is like $1.5 million. I mean, there are so many good running backs to be had. There is no point in paying a running back like the crazy amount, like $8-10 million a season. So I think there is interest between Austin Ekeler and Jim Harbaugh, but at $7.4 million per season, that's Austin Ekeler's exact market value. Is Jim Harbaugh, or really is Joe Ortiz, going to be willing to shell out that kind of money for a running back? Because we've seen with the Ravens, they don't value running backs like that. They always go by running back by committee approach. I don't think they've given like a second contract to a running back in a very long time, at least not a contract that is highly valuable like Austin Ekeler is wanting in free agency. I don't know if he's going to get that, but I think Austin Ekeler, if you bring him on anything under $4 million a season, I would be willing to do that for like 2 years maximum. I would not be wanting to commit more than 2 years. But again, you look at the running backs in free agency right now that you can get for a lot less money. It's just the value is so high in the running back market. I didn't even talk about the freaking draft prospects because there are other guys in the draft that are really good running backs as well. Braelon Allen from Wisconsin, Blake Corum from Michigan. That is a Harbaugh dude. I would rather have a lot of those guys in the draft than Austin Ekeler. But whatever happens, Austin Ekeler, I think he is a good guy. I would love to have him back on this team on the right price, under $4 million a season. And if you didn't see my video yesterday, I talked a lot about Brock Bowers, who might be the 5th overall pick to the Chargers.